In the heart of Lagos, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and luxury cars roared like lions on wide, clean highways, lived a man named Juma, young, brilliant, and devastatingly wealthy. He was the CEO of Kamau Group, a conglomerate that controlled everything from real estate to technology. To the world, he was a golden boy, a visionary. To the women who knew him, he was a prize. But to himself, Juma was tired of false smiles, rehearsed affections, and love with price tags. He sat one evening in his high-rise penthouse overlooking the ocean, his fingers swirling the last drops of aged whiskey in a crystal glass. His face, though youthful, bore the weight of years of isolation beneath success. His last relationship had ended not with a bang, but with a cold receipt. The woman he had given everything to had only loved his money. How do I know who would love me if I were just a nobody? He asked the glass, hoping it had answers. It didn't. But that night, an idea lit up in his mind brighter than the Lagos skyline. What if he became that nobody? And so, the plan was set. Within a week, Juma shed his tailored suits for torn jeans and a dusty shirt. His security team was reduced to just one man, undercover and out of sight. He adopted a new name, Jojo. He left behind luxury and comfort and moved to a far-off town called Makwand, a bustling but impoverished village tucked between dry roads and red soil. There, he rented a single-room shack with a leaking tin roof, the type of place he'd never stepped foot in until now. Jojo, the construction worker, was born. Each morning, Jojo woke up to the rooster's crows, not the hum of air conditioning. He carried bricks, mixed cement, and sweated under the burning sun every other laborer on the construction site. It was painful, humbling, but strangely freeing. No one knew him. No one begged for his attention. No one flattered him for status, and for the first time in years, Juma felt anonymous. That's when he saw her. It was a dusty Monday morning. Jojo dragged his tired body from the shack and passed by a small roadside stall. A girl stood behind baskets filled with sacks of freshly milled rice, golden grains shimmering at sunshine under the morning light. She wore a simple wrapper, a faded blouse, and a smile that could hush thunderstorms. "Good morning, uncle. You want some more rice?" she asked sweetly. He nodded. "Give me 2 cups." She measured with expert precision, scooped the rice into a paper bag, and handed it over with both hands. "Thank you. My name is Zina," she added warmly. "You're new here?" Jojo smiled. "Yes, name's Jojo." She laughed softly. "Funny name. I'm a funny man." From that moment on, rice wasn't just breakfast, it was an excuse. Every morning, Jojo visited Zina's stall. Sometimes he bought rice. Sometimes he bought beans. Sometimes nothing. But he always left with something more: a smile, a laugh, a spark. Zina was no ordinary girl. She wasn't just selling rice. She was feeding dreams. She used the money to support her little brother, Kofi, who was disabled and couldn't walk. She read books under the lantern when the market closed, learning English, hoping one day to become a teacher. "I know I'm just a rice seller," she once told Jojo, "but one day I'll open a school for children like my brother, even if I have to build it with my own hands." Jojo listened, his heart softening like butter on fire. He admired her spirit, her resilience, her honesty. She never asked what he did for a living. She never hinted at wanting more than what he could give. She gave freely, even when she had little, and in her eyes, Jojo saw something rare: truth. But secrets were hard to hide. Jojo was different from the other laborers. He spoke too well. His hands were soft at first. He used words like investment and asset without noticing. Zina noticed. "You sure you just carry bricks?" she asked him one day, half joking. Jojo chuckled, wiping sweat off his forehead. "Maybe I used to do something else, but right now, I'm just a man trying to earn his daily bread." Zina didn't pry. She simply nodded. "That's enough." But not everyone was so kind. The village had eyes and tongues. Zina is wasting her beauty on a pauper, some whispered. She needs a man who can lift her, not sink her deeper. Among the loudest voices was Boko, a thug and Zina's former suitor. He had tried to force her into marriage once. She refused. He never forgave her. Now he watched her growing closeness with Jojo with burning jealousy. Rice girl and cement boy. He spat one day. They'll die in poverty together. But Jojo paid no mind. Because every evening, after the hammering stopped and the dust settled, he found his way to Zina's stall, and together they laughed under the fading sky. He'd never felt richer. In Macquant. Time didn't run on clocks, it ran on sunrises, rooster calls, and the chatter of the market square. And for Jojo, every new day meant one thing: another chance to see Zina. Their routine settled like the rhythm of the dusty breeze. He'd buy a cup of rice or two in the morning, help her set up the baskets, and listen as she spoke of her dreams. He never tired of hearing her speak. Her words painted pictures of hope, of struggle, of a future brighter than the present. Jojo never told her he was rich. In truth, he forgot he was. The more time he spent with her, the more he felt like Jojo was who he really was, not Juma the billionaire, but Jojo the man. A man who laughed hard, worked hard, and was falling in love with a woman who saw through all his masks without even knowing it. Zina's life was not easy. Her stall barely made enough to keep her and her brother fed. Kofi, her younger brother, spent most of his time inside their tiny mud-walled room, reading donated books and drawing pictures of skulls. He couldn't walk due to a spinal condition he was born with, and treatment had always been out of reach. Jojo visited Kofi often. The boy took to him immediately. Uncle Jojo. Kofi grinned one evening, holding up a sketch. This is the school my sister will build one day. She will be the headmistress, and I will be the librarian. Jojo looked at the drawing, rough, simple, but full of heart. He smiled. And I'll come be your math teacher. They all laughed. Even in poverty, there was joy, but the world around them was not always kind. Boko, the brute suitor, began his campaign of cruelty. He mocked Jojo at the construction site, knocking over his tools, pushing him in front of others, making crude jokes. Why carry bricks when your woman sells rice? Let her carry you instead. The other workers laughed. Jojo didn't. He turned to Boko with quiet fury. Your words say more about your weakness than my poverty. Boko clenched his fists but walked away. For now, the village began to murmur. Some admired Jojo's kindness. Others couldn't understand why Zina, young, beautiful, and full of promise, was wasting her time on a man with calloused hands and no land of his own. But Zina didn't care. I don't want a man who owns the world, she said one night as they sat beside a lantern. I want a man who makes my world feel safe. Jojo felt a lump rise in his throat. What would happen if she knew the truth? Would she still love him? Or would she walk away, feeling betrayed? He didn't want to risk losing her, so he stayed silent. Until one day, the first storm came. It began like any other morning. Jojo rose early, washed his face in a basin filled with collected rainwater, and headed to the market. But when he arrived, Zina wasn't at her stall. She never missed a day. He rushed to her hut, knocking frantically. She opened the door slowly, eyes red and swollen. Kofi's sick, she said, voice cracking. He hasn't eaten, and he has a fever. I have no money for medicine. Jojo didn't think. He ran to the pharmacy, bought everything the doctor had recommended, and returned. Zina tried to stop him. Jojo, how can you afford? I've been saving. He lied gently. I don't spend much. Let me help. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she broke down into his arms, sobbing like a child who'd held in pain too long. That night, Jojo stayed by Kofi's side, wiping sweat from the boy's forehead, feeding him spoon by spoon. He slept sitting up, refusing to leave the small room. By morning, Kofi's fever had broken. Zina wept with relief. "I don't know how to thank you. You already have," Jojo whispered. From that day on, their bond deepened. They began to walk through the village together. She taught him how to cook jollof rice the real way. He taught her how to budget her small income better. They laughed under mango trees and danced during the full moon festivals. To everyone, they looked like a poor couple in love, but Juma was torn inside. The deeper he fell, the more he dreaded the truth. He wanted to tell her, but fear held him back. What if she thought he'd used her, lied to her? So, he postponed the confession again and again, but fate, as it always does, had its own plans. One afternoon, a black SUV pulled into the village quietly. A well-dressed man stepped out, scanned the area, and whispered into a phone. Jojo's assistant, Malik, had arrived. He didn't enter the market. He didn't speak to Zina. But he watched. He reported back to headquarters. Because trouble was brewing in Juma's world, the Kamau Group was facing a board crisis. Investors were panicking. A hostile takeover loomed. And the man who could fix it all was mixing cement in Macquarie like a nobody. Malik waited until Jojo returned to the construction site. "Sir," he said quietly, "they need you in the city. Now, everything's falling apart." Jojo's heart dropped. He looked toward the village, toward the path that led to Zina's stall. Would she understand? Would she wait? He had no choice. His empire was built with blood and sweat, and thousands of workers depended on him. "I'll go," he whispered. And without goodbye, without a final hug, without a last cup of rice, Jojo left Macquarie, back to being Juma, back to the world he thought he'd escaped. But in leaving, he left behind something far more valuable than gold. He left behind a girl with eyes like fire, and a heart already breaking. The absence of Jojo was like silence after a song, the kind that leaves you feeling hollow. Zina woke up each morning hoping to hear his laugh echo from the construction site. But days passed, then a week, then 2. And Jojo was nowhere to be found. No message. No farewell, just gone. At first, she thought he might be sick. Or perhaps he'd gone back to his hometown. Maybe he had family matters. But as the days stretched on, hope turned to worrying, and worrying turned to pain. Zina didn't show it. She still opened her rice stall, still smiled at customers, still read to Kofi every night. But the light behind her eyes dimmed. Her laughter lost its lilt. Maybe he wasn't who he said he was, she whispered to herself one evening, sitting by the fire. Maybe he used me like others before. She shook her head. No, he was different, wasn't he? But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and in the shadows, Boko watched. He could smell weakness, like a predator sniffing blood. Zina was vulnerable now, heart bruised and soul-searching. He approached her one afternoon, swaggering with arrogance. "Jojo left," he said, his voice thick with mockery. "Men like him don't stay. You should have known." Zina didn't respond. Boko leaned closer, his breath hot. He was probably a criminal, a fraud. "Who knows what lies he told you?" Zina turned to him, fury in her eyes. "Even if he lied, he was 10 times the man you'll ever be." The market grew silent. Vendors turned, customers stared. Boko's face twisted with shame and rage. He clenched his fists, but backed away, humiliated once more. But humiliation is a dangerous thing when it breeds revenge. That same night, Boko gathered his gang, rough boys who answered to no one. "We'll find out who Jojo really was," he growled. "And when we do, we'll make sure he never steps foot here again." Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Jojo had resumed his role as Juma Kamau, the billionaire with boardrooms to conquer and empires to protect. He wore suits again, drove bulletproof cars, barked orders, but his heart wasn't in it. During meetings, his mind drifted to the village, to Zina's stall, to the laughter they shared, the rice she measured so carefully, the way her fingers brushed his when handing over a paper bag. He missed Kofi's joys, Zina's dreams, the warmth of a life without pretense. Malik, his assistant, noticed the change. You seem distracted, sir, Juma sighed. I left something behind. Something important. You want to go back? I can't, he muttered. Not until this crisis is over. But fate has a strange sense of timing. One morning, headlines exploded across Nigeria. Mystery CEO of Kamau Group rescued company from collapse after 2-week disappearance. Where did Juma Kamau go? Billionaire vanishes, then returns to save empire. The story went viral. Blogs speculated. Videos circulated. And in the dusty village of Makwarnd, one person read the news on a borrowed phone with trembling hands. Zina. She stared at the imager, well-groomed man in a navy suit, walking out of a black SUV. The caption read, Billionaire Juma Kamau returns to boardroom. There a sudden retreat. Zina's heart pounded. The face was unmistakable. It was him, Jojo. But he wasn't Jojo. He was Juma, a billionaire. A man who had pretended to be poor. The paper bag she had once handed him now felt like a mockery. She sat in silence, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why didn't he tell me? Why lie? Kofi tried to console her. Maybe he had a reason, sister. But Zina couldn't breathe past the betrayal. And Boko. He had seen the news too. He walked through the market like a peacock, announcing the truth. So the pauper was a prince after all, hiding his riches and playing with our rice girl's heart. He spun lies like a spider, claiming Jojo had only come to Makwarnd for fun, to laugh at the poor, to slum it for sport. Zina stayed quiet, but her spirit shattered more each day. To everyone, she looked strong, but inside, she was drowning. Until one day, something unexpected happened. A black car rolled into the village, slowly, silently. It stopped in front of the market. The door opened, and out stepped a man in faded jeans and dusty boots. The real Jojo, not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the man who had danced with Zina under the stars and fed Kofi warm soup during a fever. He walked through the market, eyes scanning, heart pounding. Some villagers gasped, others pointed. Zina stood at her stall, frozen. Jojo approached her slowly. I came back, he said softly. She didn't respond. I never meant to lie. I just wanted someone to love me for me. Still, she said nothing. I know I hurt you, he whispered. But everything I felt, everything I said, it was real. I was Jojo. Even when I was Juma. Her eyes welled. You left without a word. I was afraid. Afraid that if I told you the truth, I'd lose you. You lost me anyway. She whispered. Jo looked down. Then, slowly, he placed a small, worn-out rice bag on her stall, the first one she had ever given him. I kept this, he said. It reminded me of the day I met the most honest person I've ever known. Then he walked away. The market buzzed. Boko smirked from a distance. But Zina, she held the bag in her hand, staring at it like it held all the answers to a puzzle she didn't know how to solve. And somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. Maybe not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Zina held the little rice bag in trembling hands long after Jojo had disappeared down the dusty path. The fabric was frayed, the edges darkened by time, but inside lay memories far richer than its worn appearance could suggest. It was more than a bag, it was a symbol of trust, of beginnings, of something simple and pure that had been overshadowed by truth. But what Jojo didn't know, what no one in Makwarnd knew, was that Zina had secrets too. Long before Jojo had come into her life, Zina's past had left quiet scars. Her mother, once a teacher in the city, had fled to Makwarnd after a scandal that almost destroyed their family. Zina had grown up under whispers and shame, whispers that her father was a criminal who vanished after embezzling money from a school fund. Some villagers still gossiped. Others avoided her altogether. Zina never spoke of it. She worked hard, stayed humble, and focused on raising Kofi. But there were nights when she clutched her mother's teaching certificate like a prayer, swearing she would one day clear the family's name and give Kofi a better life. The rice stall was her shield, her dignity, her vow to survive without begging or bitterness. So when Jojo had walked into her world kind, generous, mysterious, she had dared to believe in something again. And when he vanished, taking with him the innocence of that belief, the ache wasn't just heartbreak, it was history repeating. She whispered to herself, why do the good things always hide something bad? Kofi, watching her closely, finally spoke one evening. Sister, maybe Jojo didn't hide who he was to hurt you. Maybe he did it because he didn't want to hurt you. Zina turned, her eyes heavy. He lied, Kofi, but he loved. She knelt beside her little brother, brushing back his hair. How do you know? Because you only cry like this when something is too beautiful to hate. She smiled faintly, wiping a tear. Maybe Kofi was right. Meanwhile, Jojo sat at the edge of the village, alone in the small shack he had once called home. The roof still leaked, the floor still cracked beneath his boots. But the silence now was deafening. He hadn't expected forgiveness, not right away, but he had hoped for a flicker, a sign, a chance. His assistant Moloch called that night. Sir, the investors are demanding your presence. You've been gone again for 3 days. Jojo ran a hand through his hair. I can't leave yet. There, threatening to withdraw funding, Jojo looked toward the flickering village lights, knowing every second spent here risked his empire. But something inside whispered louder, what is wealth without peace? Still, he needed to act, not just with words, but with something greater. So, the next morning, he did what no one expected. He returned to Zina's stall, but this time, he didn't come empty-handed. With him were builders, surveyors, bricks, paint, and a large wooden sign that read, Kofi Hope School, in honor of Zina's dream. Zina stood stunned as workers began clearing land beside the market. Jojo walked to her slowly, heart pounding. I didn't come here to buy your forgiveness, he said, voice trembling. I came here to honor your dream. Zina's lips parted. Why? Because the moment I met you, I knew I'd found someone braver than I've ever been. You didn't need money to fight for your family, you had love. And love is richer than anything I own. Tears spilled from her eyes, but still, she asked, why didn't you tell me? Jojo knelt before her in front of everyone, because I didn't think I deserved you. The market went silent. Even Boko, standing at the edge of the crowd, could say nothing. Zina looked at Jojo for a long moment. Then, slowly, she turned and walked away. Jojo didn't chase her. He stayed kneeling, in the dust, because love doesn't demand. It waits. That night, Zina sat with Kofi, watching the moonlight dance across the floor. He built a school in your name, Kofi whispered. I know, she said softly. And he's not just rich in money. He's rich in love. Zina closed her eyes. Then why does love feel so confusing? Kofi took her hand. Because it's real. The next morning, the school's foundation was laid. The whole village came to watch. Children danced. Elders blessed the land. Zina didn't show up. Jojo worked anyway. He lifted bricks, mixed sand, helped paint the first plank. And on the 5th day, just as the sun was setting, Zina arrived. She stood beside him, silently, watching the workers pour cement. Then she whispered, my mother always said, if a man builds you a future, don't walk away because of his past. Jojo turned, heart caught in his throat. She looked him in the eyes. I'm still angry, she said. Still hurt. I know. But I also know that the man who carried bricks beside me is the same man who's building my brother's dream. Jojo swallowed hard. I'm not perfect, Zina. I never needed perfect, she said. Just real. And with that, she reached for his hand. And the whole village exhaled in joy. That evening, the entire village of Macquarie buzzed with something electric, something that tasted like hope and sounded like second chances. The rice seller and the construction worker, once mocked for their dusty love, were now the center of whispers laced with awe. Zina and Jojo walked side by side, fingers interlaced, not saying much. They didn't have to. The silence between them was no longer filled with questions or doubt, it was full of understanding. Like the quiet before a sunrise, when they reached Zina's home, Kofi was sitting outside on a low wooden stool, sketching. In the fading light, he looked up and saw them. His smile exploded across his face. "I knew you'd come back together," he shouted, waving his drawing like a flag of victory. Jojo laughed as he knelt down. "What's this one?" Kofi turned the page and showed him. It was a rough but vibrant drawing of the nearly completed school. There were little stick figures in uniforms and a giant heart drawn over the roof. "This is where the next generation of Makwarnd will grow," Kofi said. "And you both of you planted the seed." Zina knelt beside them, arms wrapping around Kofi's thin shoulders. Jojo looked at them, this humble family that had already given him more than all his boardrooms and bank accounts ever could. That night, Jojo stayed. He sat on the dirt floor and helped Kofi with his reading. He and Zina cooked rice over an open fire. They shared stories under a sky filled with stars, the kind not dimmed by city lights or city lies. For the first time in a long time, Jojo didn't feel like a man running from something. He felt like a man building something. The next morning, Makwarnd woke early. There was movement everywhere, men hammering, women cooking food for the workers, children running barefoot with joy. The school was nearly finished, and the day of its opening had been announced. But just as the celebrations were about to begin, an unfamiliar black SUV rolled into the village, sleek, tinted, and imposing. Out stepped a woman, tall, beautiful, dressed in heels that didn't belong in red soil. Her name was Nella, and she wasn't just anyone. She was Jojo's ex-fiancée. Whispers rippled through the village as Nella marched toward the construction site. She spotted Jojo immediately and walked up to him without hesitation. "Juma," she said, voice sharp with judgment. "You vanished, and this is where you've been." Playing laborer with peasants. Zina, nearby, froze. Jojo stepped between the two women. "Nella, leave," she laughed, eyes cold. "You threw away everything for her." She glanced at Zina like she was a speck of dirt. "This is the woman who replaced me." Zina's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Jojo's voice was firm. "Yes, and she didn't replace you. She revealed what love is supposed to feel like." Nella raised an eyebrow. "And when you're bored of this fantasy, what then?" "She's not one of us, Juma. She doesn't belong in your world." Jojo stepped forward. "No, Nella, I didn't belong in your world. Not anymore." This, he turned towards Zina, who was now standing beside Kofi. "This is where I found my peace, my truth, my future." Nella stared for a moment, then, with one final scarf, turned on her heels and stormed off. As the SUV disappeared in a cloud of dust, Jojo turned to face the crowd that had gathered in silence. He cleared his throat. "I know many of you doubted me. Some still do. I don't blame you. But the truth is, I came to Makwarnd to escape the noise of a world that had forgotten what real things felt like. Here, I remembered, because of Zina, because of Kofi, because of all of you." He looked to the children standing behind him in makeshift uniforms. "And today, I'm not asking for your approval. I'm giving you my promise that this village will never be forgotten again." The crowd erupted in cheers. Drums began to beat. Women ululated in celebration. The grand ribbon was tied across the entrance of the newly painted school. And when Jojo handed Zina the scissors, her hands trembled. "For you," he whispered. "For everything you've taught me." She smiled, tears shining. "For our future." As the ribbon was cut, the children flooded inside, running to the blackboards, jumping on benches, shouting joyfully. The classroom buzzed with laughter and life. And outside, Jojo held Zina's hand as they watched their new foundation rise, not of brick and cement, but of honesty, of resilience, of love. That night, Under a wide moon, the villagers gathered for a celebration like none Macquarie had seen in decades. Fires blazed, dancers twirled, and storytellers recounted the tale of a man from nowhere who built a school and won the rice girl's heart. Zina and Jojo sat together, not speaking much, but smiling often. Kofi leaned in and whispered, "You're my favorite story now, Uncle Jojo." Jojo chuckled, "Let's make it a long one." Then, and from the shadows, Boko watched, alone, bitter, beaten not by wealth, but by character. As the fire crackled and the drums pulsed, the village of Macquarie celebrated not a wedding, not a festival, but something more rare, a reunion of souls meant to be, a poor rice seller, a disguised billionaire. And a love that no amount of money could buy, betray, or break. Macquarie breathed easier in the weeks that followed the school's grand opening. The once forgotten village had been touched by a transformation: freshly painted buildings, better roads under construction, and a school that now rang with the cheerful shouts of children every morning. Zina's stall remained open. Even though Jojo begged her to stop working, she refused. "This stall reminds me who I am," she would say. "I'll stop when my brother walks into that school, his own legs." That was Zina, moved by riches, steady as a mountain. And Jojo, he split his time between the city and Macquarie, flying in quietly and staying in the same modest room he once rented. He no longer hid his identity, yet he lived as if the mansion in Lagos didn't exist. At night, he'd sit by the fire with Zina and Kofi, eating roasted maize and listening to village tales. It felt like peace. It felt like love had finally settled. But storms don't always announce themselves with thunder. Sometimes they begin with silence. One afternoon, Zina was preparing rice at her stall when a man in a clean shirt and tie approached, holding a clipboard and a sly smile. "Good morning, Miss Zina," he said. "Yes, I'm from the land registrar's office, here to deliver a notice." He handed her a thin envelope and walked away. She opened it. Her heart skipped. It was a land dispute claim, a legal document saying the land the school was built on belonged to someone else. That someone, Boko. Jojo was out of town that day, attending a critical investor meeting in Abuja. Zina rushed to the local council office. The registrar confirmed it. Boko had presented old land documents claiming his late uncle owned the land, and now he wanted compensation for the unauthorized use. Word spread like wildfire. Some villagers whispered, "He's doing it out of jealousy." Others said, "Maybe Jojo didn't follow the proper process." But Zina knew this was revenge. That night, she wrote a letter and gave it to a courier. It was addressed to Juma in Lagos. 3 days later, Jojo returned to Macquarie, fury in his stride. He went straight to the registrar's office, papers in hand, demanding a review of the title. But the office claimed Boko's documents were older and more original. This land was unclaimed 4 years. Jojo argued, "We invested in it when no one cared. But corruption has quiet corners." Money had passed through hands. Jojo's name, despite its power, couldn't erase what had already been filed. So he took a different route. He asked for a village council meeting, calling for the elders, leaders, and every villager to gather. On the day of the meeting, the village square filled with murmurs and heat. Boko stood tall, arrogant, his lawyer by his side. Zina and Jojo sat quietly until they were called. The head elder, a wise man named Bobatund, opened the floor. "Jojo," he said slowly, "you built this school, but the land has history. What do you say?" Jojo stood. "When I first came here, I came with nothing. No titles, no favors, just hands to work. When I fell in love with this village, I wanted to give something back. I asked around, and everyone said the land was abandoned. I registered it under Macquarie Development Trust. Now Boko claims it after we built something." Boko's lawyer stood. "The original deed, signed in 1989, proves that the land belonged to Boko's uncle. That ownership transferred to Boko after his uncle's death." Jojo's voice was steady, and yet he never cleared it. never planted a seed, never built a wall. Not until there was value. The village grew tense. Zina stepped forward. "If this is about money, take mine," she said, holding up a small tin box. "It's not much, but it's all I have. You can have it, Boko. Just don't take the school." The crowd gasped. Bako laughed. "I don't need your coins, rice girl. I want respect. And I'll get it." Then he dropped the real blow. "If the school wants to remain, let Jojo pay me 50 million. The silence was immediate, crushing. 50 million, not for land. For pride. Jo stood still, fists clenched. Then he turned to the crowd. "I won't pay ransom for a dream that belongs to all of us." And then, something unexpected happened. One by one, villagers stood. A woman named Mama Ada stepped forward, removing her gold necklace. "I'll donate this," she said. "I don't have money, but my children study there now." Then a young Mano Koro, the mason who had helped build the school, raised his hand. "I have 5,000. I want to give it." Another came forward. And another. The villagers, poor and proud, began forming a line, each person offering what little they could. Coins, bracelets, hand-carved wooden stalls. Boko sneered. "You'll never make 50 million with pity and bracelets." Jojo smiled faintly. "You're wrong," he said. "Because I already have something you never will. A community." The council elder raised his hand. "I declare this dispute under review. No changes until further legal clarification." The school stands for now. The crowd erupted in cheers. Boko stormed off. Later that evening, Zina and Jojo sat beneath the mango tree beside the school. Lanterns glowed around them, and fireflies floated like soft stars. Zina turned to him. "You didn't flinch once today." Jojo took her hand. "Because I realized something. I didn't build this school for charity. I built it for legacy. And legacies don't beg. They stand firm." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "This isn't just your fight anymore," she whispered. "It's ours." He kissed her forehead. And in that moment, as the drums of celebration started in the distance, neither of them noticed the first wind of a greater storm to come. Because sometimes, the biggest betrayal doesn't wear anger. It wears a smile. Week after the council meeting, the village of Makwarnd slowly returned to its rhythm. Though an undercurrent of tension remained, the school had opened, the children were learning, and villagers were united like never before. But everyone knew Boko wasn't done. Not a man like him. He had the wounded pride of a snake and the patience of one too. Jojo, meanwhile, resumed his travels between Lagos and Makwarnd. Though his business empire was now thriving again, his heart remained rooted in the village. He refused to live in the wealth of the city when his love and legacy were growing from red earth and dusty footprints. One quiet afternoon, while Jojo was away in Lagos, Zina was cleaning Kofi's small reading shelf when she found something odd wedged between two old textbooks. It was an envelope, faded, sealed with brittle wax, and addressed in elegant handwriting, "To Miss Zina Okoye, to be opened only when you are ready to forgive your father." Zina froze. It was her mother's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter and a photograph. She sat down on the straw mat, unfolded the paper, and began to read. "My dearest Zina, if you're reading this, it means you've grown into the woman I always knew you would be. Brave, honest, full of grace. There is something I've kept from you, not to deceive you, but to protect your heart from the kind of pain I could never fix. Your father was not a thief. He was a whistleblower. He discovered embezzlement in the school board where he worked, and he tried to report it. But the system was corrupt. The guilty turned the story around and painted him as the culprit. He was arrested, but before the trial, he fled. Not out of guilt, but because he feared for our lives. They had begun following us, threatening me. He wanted us to escape with him. I refused. I couldn't raise a child on the run, and so we parted. He left me a choice to keep his name clean in your heart or let you believe he abandoned us. I chose silence. Maybe I was wrong, but I believed that your strength would not come from knowing the pain, but from rising above it. His name is Elijah Kamau. And Zina, he's Jojo's uncle." Zina's breath caught. The room felt suddenly too still, too silent. Her eyes darted back to the photograph. It showed a younger version of her mother, holding hands with a tall man beside a dusty car. The man looked unmistakably like Jojo, same sharp jawline, same thoughtful eyes. Her heart thundered. Elijah Kamau, Jojo's uncle. Her father. It couldn't be, could it? She ran out of the hut, heart pounding like war drums. She found Mama Ada at the market. "Did you ever know a man named Elijah Kamau?" Zina asked. Mama Ada's face turned pale. "Elijah," she whispered. "That was years ago. He left in the middle of the night. We heard he died." "Did he have family?" "Yes, a younger brother and a nephew." The boy's name was Juma. Zina's world tilted. Juma, Jojo, her Jojo. That evening, Jojo returned to Macwand. He found Zina sitting outside her home, the envelope in her hands. She didn't speak as he approached. She simply handed him the letter. Jojo read it slowly, his face frozen in shock. When he finished, he lowered it with trembling hands. "My uncle, Elijah," he said quietly. "You're his daughter." Zina nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I never knew. I thought he ran, that he left us, but now." Jojo sank to his knees. "My uncle vanished when I was a child. He was my hero. He taught me how to read, how to fix a door, how to look a man in the eyes and speak the truth." He paused. "My father always said Elijah was brave but misunderstood, that he tried to do the right thing in a world that punished righteousness." Zina looked at Jojo. "We were connected before we even met." He reached for her hands. "Our story started generations ago." Tears flowed freely now, not of pain, but of a strange, divine reunion that felt both overwhelming and sacred. Jojo looked into her eyes. "We're not just building a future, we're healing a past." The next morning, Jojo made a decision. He called a press conference in front of national media. He stood on the school's front steps and announced, "My name is Juma Kamau. I am the CEO of Kamau Group, the builder of this school, and the nephew of Elijah Kamau, a man wrongly accused, unfairly shamed, and unfairly erased from history. Today, I honor his name." He held up a framed photo of Elijah and placed it above the entrance of the school. "From this day forward, this institution shall be called the Elijah Kamau School of Courage and Truth." Reporters scrambled to record, villagers wept, and Zina stood in the crowd with Kofi by her side, pride swelling in her chest. Justice long buried had finally been unearthed. But far away, in a high-rise office in Lagos, a man watched the press conference with narrowed eyes. He turned to his assistant. "Get Boko on the line. The Elijah Kamau School of Courage and Truth had become more than just a building. It was now a symbol of redemption, truth, and the resilience of a village that had long been overlooked." Children ran through its halls with dreams in their eyes. Parents gathered for evening lessons, learning to read and write beside their sons and daughters. Jojo and Zina were hailed as visionaries, not just in Macwand, but across the region. Media outlets featured their story, how a billionaire disguised as a construction worker had fallen in love with a rice seller, and together they unearthed a legacy once buried in lies. But every light draws its shadows, and from the darkest corners of the city, something stirred. Far away, in a polished office with glass walls and leather chairs, a man named Chief Olodel watched the rise of Macwand's story with increasing irritation. He was one of the silent investors behind the corruption that had exiled Elijah Kamau decades ago, and Jojo's recent revelations had begun shaking old alliances and reopening buried files. He couldn't afford that. So he made a call to Boko. Boko had grown more reckless since his public humiliation, losing the land claim, being outshined by Jojo, and watching Zina slip forever from his grasp had twisted his pride into something ugly. Want your revenge? Chief Olodel asked. Voice smooth, yes, Boko growled. Then listen carefully. 3 nights later, the wind howled unusually through Makond. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and the moon seemed to vanish behind layers of ash-grey sky. Zina woke with a start, a sharp crack in the air. Then a scream, then another. She rushed outside. And that's when she saw it. Flames. The school was on fire. People were running, buckets in hand. Smoke billowed into the air, glowing orange against the night sky. The roof of the main classroom had already caved in. Jojo, barefoot and frantic, joined the crowd. He rushed straight into the burning building, despite cries trying to stop him. Jojo, no, there are books. Files, he shouted. Kofi's drawings. Zina stood frozen as her world burned before her. The villagers fought with everything. They had passing buckets from the well, beating flames with blankets. But it was no use. The fire had been deliberate. A canister, empty and blackened, was found at the back of the building. The smell of petrol still lingered. It was arson, and everyone knew who. The fire was finally extinguished by dawn, but the damage had been done. Half the building was gone. The library, completely destroyed. Kofi's art wall, a display of hope, had turned to ashes. Zina sat on a stone, staring into the blackened rubble, silent. Jojo walked to her, his face soot-covered, arms blistered. He knelt beside her. I'm so sorry, he whispered. She looked at him slowly. We built it with our hearts, and we'll build it again. He took her hand, but this time, we built it fireproof. Later that morning, Jojo stood before the villagers. His voice was calm, but steel-laced. This was no accident. But we will not let fear win. I am doubling the budget. The new school will be bigger, stronger, and safer. And this time, we put in cameras. We hire security. We protect what we create. The crowd roared in support, but Jojo wasn't finished. He pointed to a large banner scorched on one side. This school is not a building, it's a belief, and no fire can burn down truth. But Zina knew this fire had deeper roots. So she paid a visit to someone. She never thought she would. Boko's mother, Mama Binta. She found her outside their compound, shelling groundnuts. Mama, Zina said quietly. Mama Binta didn't look up. I warned him that pride would one day destroy him. Please, Zina said gently. If you know anything, if he's being used, he'll destroy more than just the school. He'll destroy himself. Mama Binta sighed deeply. My son was not always cruel, but envy is like a worm, it eats the fruit from inside. Then she handed Zina a letter. I found this in his room. Zina unfolded it. It was a typed instruction sheet. Clear directions, location, timing. Signed O&Co Holdings. She recognized the name. A shell company owned by Chief Oldele. Proof. Finally. The next day, Jojo took the letter to a private legal team. Investigations began immediately. Media caught wind. Corrupt tycoon linked to school fire in Makond. Olodel denied it all, but the walls were closing in. Jojo released a statement. This is no longer just about fire. It's about what we tolerate in silence. Elijah Kamau was exiled for telling the truth. I will not let another truth die in flames. A nationwide movement began. Makond became a symbol for transparency, for fighting corruption from the ground up. And amidst the chaos, the rebuilding began. Bricks arrived. Steel. Glass. Donations poured in from local families to big names who had once doubted Jojo's methods. And at the center of it all, Zina, in her apron, stirring rice for volunteers. Kofi, now sketching plans for the school's new design. And Jojo, hammer in hand, sleeves rolled, eyes blazing with determination. Because fire may destroy buildings, but it can't touch purpose. Or love. Or legacy. The new Elijah Kamau school rose from the ashes like a phoenix, taller, stronger, and brighter than before. Its walls were painted with murals of unity and resilience. The villagers came together like never before. not just to rebuild a building, but to prove that fire couldn't destroy what was built with love and truth. Jojo had become more than a billionaire or benefactor to Masquerades. He was now a brother, a protector, and a warrior against injustice. But the fire had left scars, not just on the building, but in the hearts of those who had nearly lost everything. And for one man, the time of reckoning had come. Bako. He had gone into hiding but the fire, knowing the walls were closing in. The arrest of one of Chief Alodal's associates had exposed the web of corruption, and with the signed evidence Zina had handed over, Bako's involvement was undeniable. He was no longer a threat, he was a wanted man. But even snakes have moments of clarity before the fall. Late one evening, as the new school's windows reflected the golden sunset, a hush fell over the village. A lone figure was seen walking down the main path, dusty, disheveled, and dragging his feet. It was Bako. People stepped aside as he approached the schoolyard, heads turning, murmurs rising. Zina stood outside her stall, watching in silence. Jojo stood near the school gate, arms crossed, waiting. Bako finally reached him and without a word knelt. The whole village froze. Bako dropped his head and placed both hands on the ground. I have come, he said harshly, not for forgiveness, but for truth. Jojo didn't speak. I was angry, not just at you, but at the world. I wanted respect. I thought if I destroyed what you built, I would gain power. His voice broke. But I only destroyed myself. Zina walked forward now, her eyes steady. You tried to burn our future, Bako, she said quietly. You nearly killed the dreams of children. I know, he whispered. And I deserve whatever judgment you give. Jojo stepped forward. The crowd waited, some expecting justice, others revenge, but Jojo extended his hand. We are not here to destroy men. We are here to rebuild them. Gasps spread across the crowd. Jojo helped Bako to his feet. You want redemption? Start by laying bricks. Bako looked at him in disbelief. You'd let me help, not as a leader, as a laborer, from the bottom. Like I once was. Tears streamed down Bako's face. Thank you, he whispered. From that day on, Bako returned to the site daily. He didn't wear fancy shirts. He didn't talk loudly. He worked quietly, relentlessly. He carried bricks, cleaned toilets, painted walls. Some mocked. Others watched in silence. But the children, they began to greet him. Uncle Bako, help me reach the chalkboard. Slowly, the village softened. A month later, the grand reopening ceremony of the new Elijah Kamau school was held. A stage was built, dignitaries arrived, cameras flashed. Media swarmed. Jojo, in a simple white shirt, stood at the podium. This school was nearly destroyed by flames. But what we build with love can never be truly lost. Today, we stand taller, because we refuse to let darkness win. He paused, scanning the crowd. Zina stood when I fell. Kofi dreamed when others doubted. The villagers gave when they had nothing, and one man returned when he could have run forever. He looked at Bako, standing quietly at the back. Jojo raised a hand. Today, I do not erase his past, but I honor his courage to face it. Applause erupted, not just for Jojo but for a village that had learned the meaning of grace. That evening, a star sparkled over Masquerades. Jojo and Zina sat under the mango tree, where so many of their conversations had bloomed. Zina turned to him. You could have let him rot. Jojo smiled. And what would that make me? She laughed softly. To good. He looked into her eyes. No, just healed. She rested her head on his shoulder. So, what now? Jojo took her hand. We've built a school, a name, a legacy. He paused. Now, we build a life. The days rolled into weeks, and Masquerades flourished like never before. The once sleepy village now pulsed with new life, children with books under their arms, farmers planting more confidently, new stalls rising near the market, and the school shining like a beacon in the heart of it all. But while bricks had been laid and fires extinguished, one moment remained unwritten. One moment that had been growing quietly in the eyes of everyone who watched Zina and Jojo from afar. Wedding, the whispers began gently, women smiling knowingly, children teasing Kofi about getting a rich uncle officially, and elders dropping phrases like, "It is not good for a man and woman to build without binding their hearts." Jojo, of course, had always known what he wanted. He'd known since the day Zina shared her rice with him without knowing his name. So one morning, under a clear blue sky, and with the whole village watching from a respectful distance, he walked into Zina's stall as she arranged small bags of rice. Without a word, he dropped to one knee. He didn't have a ring. Instead, he held a tiny folded rice bag, the same one she'd once given him when he had nothing. Zina gasped, eyes wide with memory. "Zina Okoi," he said, voice trembling. "You gave me food when I was hungry, dignity when I was lost, and love when I didn't think I deserved it. Will you let me build forever with you?" Tears shimmered in her eyes, and without hesitation, she whispered, "Yes." The village erupted. Drums began beating, and by nightfall, plans were already underway. The entire community insisted on contributing. Mama Ada donated her eldest son's finest woven fabric. The school children painted wooden signs that read, "Rice and love forever." Even Boko, now completely transformed, offered to build the wedding stage by hand without pay. "This," he said, "is how I prove I've changed." Jojo smiled. "This is how we all begin again." The wedding day, Macwarnd had never seen such celebration. The village shut down completely. No stalls, no chores, just joy. The ceremony was held under the same mango tree where Jojo and Zina had shared their most honest moments. The tree was wrapped in white cloth and flowers, and hanging lanterns danced in the wind. Zina walked in, not in diamonds or pearls, but in a cream-colored traditional wrapper hand-stitched by the village women. Her veil was simple, woven with tiny gold threads. Her beauty was breathtaking, not because of makeup or wealth, but because she was home. Jojo wore a matching tunic, barefoot, his hands holding nothing but her heart. Kofi stood proudly beside them, acting as the best man, grinning from ear to ear. Elder Bob Atund officiated. "Today," he said, "we do not join a billionaire and a rice seller. We join two souls who found each other in dust, in fire, and in truth." Vows were spoken short, sincere, and tearful. Zina whispered, "I loved you when I didn't know you. I love you now that I do. And I will love you through all that may come." Jojo said, "You gave me more than love. You gave me purpose. I will spend the rest of my life building with you." And when he kissed her, the village cheered so loud it echoed through the hills. ***, no wedding had ever carried such unity. The feast was massive: goats, yams, rice, fried plantains. People danced barefoot in the sand. Elders drank sweet palm wine and told stories of how Jojo came with empty hands and left full of family. Children performed a play reenacting the day Jojo, the Rice Queen, and everyone laughed. Even Jojo's business partners from Lagos arrived, shocked, humbled, and deeply moved. "This is better than any corporate gala," one whispered. "This is real." Late into the night, as the stars watched from above, Jojo and Zina sat beside the fire. Kofi curled up beside them, fast asleep. "You know," Jojo whispered, "we could have married in Lagos, in a luxury hall, with press, music, chandeliers." Zina smiled and leaned on his shoulder. "But here, we married with hearts," he nodded. And here, our story began. The next morning, Jojo made one final surprise. He gathered the village and stood beside Zina in front of the school. "I want to donate permanent scholarships in Elijah Kamau's name," he said. "And every year, the top 3 students will be offered internships at my company." Cheers erupted. Zina added, "And we will be starting a foundation for young women in rural areas to support their education, health, and dreams." The crowd stood, cheering their names: Jojo, Zina, Kofi. Heroes. not because of riches, but because of what they chose to build with it. *** Years passed. Seasons changed. The mango tree grew taller. And with it, so did the legacy of Zina and Jojo Kamau. The Elijah Kamau School became one of the most respected institutions in the region. Its humble beginnings were still whispered to every child that walked its halls. How a poor rice seller and a disguised billionaire built it brick by brick, heart by heart. What they started was no longer just a school. It had become a movement. In Makwan, new classrooms were built, thanks to donations from both villagers and city investors inspired by the story. Teachers from across the country volunteered to work there. Graduates from the school went on to earn scholarships, return as doctors, lawyers, teachers, even engineers who helped modernize their own village. The school walls were now covered with photos not of celebrities or presidents but of students, farmers' children, orphans, dreamers, leaders in the making. Each year, the village held an event called Seed Day, where children planted trees behind the school. Zina and Jojo started the tradition. One tree per child, Jojo would say. So we always remember we don't just grow crops. We grow people. In Lagos, Jojo had restructured his entire business. Kamau Group shifted from high-rise towers and luxury projects to sustainable development, rural electrification, education funding, and women-led agriculture startups. Zina played a critical role in this transformation. She became a voice for rural women, appearing on panels, advising development agencies, and traveling between villages to share her journey. People no longer introduced her as Jojo's wife. They called her Mama. Legacy. Kofi, now in his late teens, had blossomed into a remarkable young man, part artist, part engineer. His sketches once filled a tin box under a thatched roof. Now, they adorned real structures, bridges, community halls, even a clinic he helped design in Makwan. He was set to study abroad on a full scholarship, but before leaving, he painted a massive mural on the school's outer wall. It showed two figures, one in a construction helmet, one holding a bowl of rice, standing hand in hand with children, roots growing from their feet into the earth. At the top, he painted the words, "From ashes we rise." One quiet evening, Jojo and Zina sat beneath the mango tree, now twice its size since the day he proposed. Zina rested her head on his chest, listening to the wind dance through the leaves. Jojo smiled. "You hear that?" "What?" He pointed. "Upward. That tree. It's laughing." She chuckled. "Trees don't laugh." "They do," he said, "when they've seen stories like ours." She took his hand. "You think people will remember?" "They already do," he replied. "Not because we were rich, but because we gave when it mattered." Zina looked out at the schoolyard, students running, mothers cooking, Boko now mentoring young boys in carpentry. A deep calm washed over her. "This," she whispered, "is what we were meant to build." Legacy wasn't a building. It wasn't money. It wasn't a name on a sign. It was the child who learned to dream, the woman who found her voice, the boy who chose truth over revenge, the village that rose from fire, poverty, and pain and chose love. *** Years rolled by like gentle waves. Makwan changed, and yet, in the ways that mattered most, it remained the same. The school bells still rang each morning. The mango tree still stood proudly in the heart of the village. The stalls still filled with laughter and trading voices. But now, there was electricity humming through new wires, a health clinic built beside the school, and roads that connected Makwan to towns far beyond the horizon. And in the center of it all were Jojo and Zina, older, wiser, their hair kissed by silver, their hearts still young. They had built something the world often forgot to value, a legacy not made of metal and glass, but of souls touched, lives changed, and futures rewritten. One final evening, beneath the mango tree, Kofi, now a young man returned from his studies abroad, sat with his wife and newborn daughter. Zina held the baby in her arms, her fingers gentle, her eyes moist with joy. Jojo sat beside her, resting. against the tree, his hand covering Zina's. "What will you name her?" Jojo asked Kofi. Kofi smiled. "Elijah. If she had been a boy, it would have been Elijah. But since she's a girl... Alina." A reminder of where her story began. Jojo closed his eyes. Perfect. The wind rustled through the leaves as if the tree itself approved. Elsewhere, the village square now held a monument to small, carved stone with two names engraved. Zina and Jojo Kamau. They taught us that love builds, and fire cannot erase love. Every child at the school touched it once before entering class, like a sacred rite of passage. From the final chapter of their book, Zia had written a memoir called Beneath the Rice Tree. It spread like wildfire through the country, read in schools, quoted by presidents, and held close by mothers. The final page read, "They called him a billionaire. They called me a rice girl. But together, we were builders. Not of buildings, but of people, of futures, and of something richer than gold, trust." This is our story not because it is rare, but because it is possible. Let this be your reminder. You don't need riches to matter. You need love, courage, and the will to stand when the world kneels. You are enough to begin something great. Just begin, and so. The story ends, but not with a wedding, not with wealth, not even with legacy. It ends where all great stories should, with a seed planted, a hand held, and a future made brighter by love. A billionaire who once sought to escape, a rice seller who gave without expecting, a village that rose from neglect to become a beacon, and a story carved not on pages, but in hearts. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end," so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thoughts and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy, goodbye, *.